Hello and welcome to Total Football Analysis. Today's tactical analysis will aim to give you the tactics Barcelona might use in the 2019-20 season and what changes are expected to happen if Valverde wants to finally turn his fortune around. Barcelona's right-back problem has been a topic of hot debate ever since Dani Alves left the club, and Jordi Alba on the left, despite an outstanding season in all regards, experienced a big dip in form at the worst possible time in the last campaign. On average, Barcelona led 10.64 shots per game and conceded nearly 1 goal per game. This was a dip compared to the season before. Likewise, they allowed their opposition 1.3 expected goals on average, while in 2017-18 that figure was as low as 1. Even though the differences don't seem to be big, it showed in the final statistics at the end of the season: 36 goals allowed in La Liga compared to 29 in the prior campaign, and also 2 wins less and 2 defeats more. But the problems were not only in the defensive spectre of things. When attacking, Barcelona predominantly used the left wing, with the right wing often ending up completely isolated and unused for most of the games. This happens due to Messi cutting inside and no one to continuously overlap and provide width, in contrast to the left, where Alba does this on a regular basis. Finally, the midfield has seen some better days and was sluggish and slow at certain times. And despite the accuracy rising just slightly from 89 to 89.5%, long passes, smart passes and through balls all experienced a drop in figures. As we have already stated, Barcelona tend to be extremely one-dimensional when it comes to their attacking style of play. Messi is the obvious focal point together with Jordi Alba, and most of the times it's the duo combining that causes the most problems for the opposition. But teams are starting to adapt to this and are doubling down on Alba, keeping 2 markers at bay for a potential overlap by the Spanish fullback. They can do this because the right side is rarely used in the wide areas for Barcelona. Note in this example how a fairly average course of action by Barca might look. Messi gets the ball wide and cuts inside, leaving his flank unused. This is usually a clear indication that the right back has to slot in, but with the lack of a true attacking fullback on that side, it often ends up being deserted. But looking at the 2019-20 season, there are still ways Valverde can fix this. The obvious one would be to put a natural winger on the right, for instance Ousmane Dembélé, to keep the width, slot Messi into the false 9 position and have the third forward occupy the left. In this scenario, Luis Suarez would have to be benched for a more versatile and athletic Antoine Griezmann. And the Frenchman truly looks like a great solution to this glaring problem. Griezmann would be able to transition into the middle, while Messi stays right behind him, which would give Alba the space on the left, and all the while Dembélé would stretch the opposition on the right. If, however, Griezmann is used as a center forward, the problem would still be solved. Messi is deployed as the right winger, who cuts inside, leaving the right wing empty, but Griezmann's movement is dynamic and he often slides to either flank when necessary, which we have already seen in his Barcelona debut. Antoine Griezmann's fairly average touch maps from the games he played as a center forward show that he often drifts wide when necessary. In theory, just with the incorporation of Griezmann, the attacking puzzle should be completed, but its efficiency still depends on the quality of midfield. Barcelona traditionally play with 3 midfielders, and despite some occasional switches, it is almost certain they will continue to do so in 2019-20. With that in mind, the biggest change to the existing blueprint of their team will definitely be Frenkie De Jong. The problem with Barca's usual setup is that there is often no one to play progressive passes or simply to carry the ball forward and distribute it to the forwards. Instead, that task often falls on the shoulders of Lionel Messi, who has to drop deep to receive the ball and then move it upfield. Whenever Barcelona faced a defense they couldn't unlock, Messi had to drop deep to help the progression of the ball and add some creativity. But how can the inclusion of Frenkie De Jong solve this problem? In theory, De Jong should assume this role as soon as possible, and judging by past experience and his stats, this should be his second nature. This graph is depicting the best progressive midfielders in the top 5 leagues, and De Jong is highlighted. We can clearly see that this is his specialty, and if he can replicate his numbers from Ajax at Barcelona, a huge burden could be lifted off of Messi's shoulders. Ideally, De Jong will be deployed in a midfield 3 with Busquets and either Arthur or Ivan Rakitic. We have seen that he can play well alongside the Croatian. However, as the new season rolls in, it is likely that he will assume the more advanced role, as he does tend to go forward quite often, and that would leave Arthur and Busquets to control things behind him. Of course, there's also the possibility that he overtakes Busquets as the team's number 1 pivot, but that will probably not happen at first. Over time, definitely. Apart from being more susceptible in their defense than the prior season, Barcelona have had another glaring fault in their system. They crumbled under pressure and had no tools to counter it. Messi and Suarez don't need much introduction when we take into account their lethality, but when it comes to defending, they mostly don't exist. For that reason, teams could press Barcelona and pull their defensive line extremely high up the pitch without risk of a counter-attack. As you can see in this situation, with no real threat of a transition or counter-attack, teams can freely press Barcelona and keep an extremely high defensive line. However, the inclusion of Griezmann and De Jong should bring about more energy into Barcelona's overall tactics. Neither Messi nor Suarez have the legs to lead the transition all the way from their own half, and more importantly, do that repeatedly throughout the match. One other thing they were lacking is the aggressive pressing tactics. The pressing is usually initiated with the forwards, but the aforementioned duo can't participate in that kind of a system throughout the full 90 minutes. Therefore, they are often leaving the opposition to build up freely. Barcelona would usually solve this problem, or rather they would try solving it, by relying on the midfielders to work more than usual. Thus, a bigger role was given to the likes of Arturo Vidal and Ivan Rakitic, who could run all day and cover multiple positions in defensive transitions. Looking ahead, the inclusion of Frenkie De Jong and Antoine Griezmann should bring about a positive change. Both are well known for the exceptional defensive work on the pitch and are used to doing it regularly and efficiently. In terms of tactics, we should not expect revolutionary changes, but rather improving the already implemented blueprint of their style of play. We can definitely expect Barcelona to go back to their roots with a systematic building up from the back and the usage of overlapping fullbacks. This is an expected lineup of Barcelona, with their strongest 11 included, with their possible substitutes. Of course, multiple variations can be extracted from such a squad with such great depth, but both of the newcomers should slot into the first 11 in no time, which was hopefully made a bit clearer in this tactical analysis.